Fundamentally, I think that Kirby games should be two things. They should be cute, and they should be easy. And that's not just me speculating. The original creator made Kirby as an attempt to make a game where it was easy and welcoming to new players. Now, the issue with that comes up is that while that's great for new players, Kirby games tend to not have a lot to offer for veteran players because of the lack of challenge. But that's where copy abilities come into play. Now, the first Kirby game didn't have copy abilities, and for those that don't know, a copy ability in Kirby is when he inhales an enemy and takes their power. And the first game didn't have that. And because of that, the game didn't really grab me personally, and I feel like it probably didn't grab a lot of people that have been playing games for a long time. But following that, there was Kirby's Adventure, which introduced the copy mechanic. And I think that this is probably the best thing the Kirby series could have done, because while the copy abilities don't increase the difficulty to help veteran players engage more, what they do is they offer more options. So even though the more advanced players aren't having a huge challenge, they're engaged because these different copy abilities allow you a multitude of options for any given scenario. So you're connected into the game by how you're choosing to approach these obstacles. That brings me to the game that I want to talk about today, which is Kirby Superstar for the Super Nintendo. For those not in the know, Kirby Superstar is not a larger Kirby game, but actually a game that includes several smaller sub-games, which are unique platforming adventures that Kirby goes on that have their own goals and final bosses, etc. And that game is really interesting with how it handles copy abilities for a couple of reasons. The copy mechanic usually has a twist in most of the mainline Kirby series, and Superstar has two twists. The first one being that each copy ability isn't just one singular move, it's a set of moves that you can do by selecting certain directional inputs to include with the action command. It's kind of like Super Smash Bros. In that way. The other twist is that you can spawn what's called a helper character, which is just an AI-controlled character that helps you out in battle. It can also be controlled by the second player if you have a friend to play with. These options are great on paper, but with the amount of versatility with each copy ability, it can be a little bit overwhelming to players. So Superstar needed a way to compartmentalize each copy ability and teach the players on a one-to-one basis. That brings me to the topic of the video, which I managed to get to before the 3-minute mark, and that is the Great Cave Offensive. The Great Cave Offensive is the third, if you're going in order of difficulty, platforming sub-game in Kirby Superstar. And the premise of it is that it's a treasure hunt. You go through a large underground area and you have to collect 60 unique treasures. And the way this connects back to that learning that I was talking about before is that most of the treasures you collect are actually connected to a challenge that makes you use one of the copy abilities in a unique or interesting way. And this is great, because there's so many copy abilities and so many options with each copy ability that you kind of need an incentive to sit down and mess around with each of them just to get a feel for how they play, so you're not just picking up the bomb copy ability and blowing everything away. To be fair, this isn't a unique concept in gaming, the idea of incentivizing player progression through collectibles, but I think the fine details are where this specific subgame really shines. The first thing of note is actually the treasures themselves, because a lot of games that have collectibles just for the sake of being collectibles, they can be kind of generic, but in Superstar you actually collect really interesting items. There's some things that are just generic gold coin or whatever, but a lot of them are actually Nintendo related. You can collect things like the Screw Attack or the Triforce, and in the gaming culture of the Super Nintendo era, this is stuff kids would have been very familiar with. It's stuff that I'm familiar with now. And I think it's really neat that they chose those kind of items. So when you're playing through, you're like, oh man, I wonder what is the next random bit that I'm going to find in here. You can even find the hat from Mario vs. Wario, which is a Japanese exclusive Super Famicom game. And I'm not going to lie, I was pretty tickled to find that one. So yeah, generally speaking, I think it's really great that they decided to include treasures that made you want to go find them. The next thing that I wanted to touch on with the Great Cave Offensive is iteration cycles. And correct me if you're a game design person and it's a different phrase that I'm thinking of, but the idea here is when you fail to complete one of the challenges that results in a treasure chest, it's very, very easy to go back and do it again without much error. So when in the Great Cave Offensive, the challenges are enclosed into individual rooms for the most part. So you can leave the room and come back in, everything's reset, and you can try it again. And in almost every situation, in almost every room, when you come back in, the copy ability that you need is right there. And you think this would be obvious because you don't want to backtrack and go find a random copy ability and then come back, because you're really just like using up a bunch of time to try to do the same challenge that you were doing before. But yeah, it's not obvious because in Kirby's Dream Land 2, and don't worry, I'm going to shit on all the Kirby's Dream Land games before I'm done this, I'm sure, but I hated the way the Kirby's Dream Land 2 did this. What they did with their using power-ups to uncover secrets thing was you'd have to go find an individual power-up and usually find another component and then come back, and that would take a couple of minutes before you'd even get to try the challenge again, and that was really, really irritating. So I, among other things that I had an issue with Kirby's Dream Land 2, but that's a different video. But in Superstar, with one minor exception, with one of the rooms needing a hammer that you have to go find somewhere else, you actually almost always have immediate access to the copy ability that is related to the challenge that's in the room. So the fact that you can easily reset the challenges and the fact that what you need to complete the challenges is usually right there, I think is a really awesome way to have designed those areas. So that is actually it. That's all that I can think of right now for the specific elements in the Great Cave Offensive that I thought were really interesting or well put together as far as teaching people how to use the copy abilities. Let me know down below if you think that I am correct in my assumption that the purpose of the Great Cave Offensive was to be a teaching tool, or if you think that I am wrong. Also, let me know if you think that the Kirby's Dream Land 1 and 2 were great, and that I'm just full of crap for speaking ill of them. I definitely want to hear what you have to say about that. But that's it, guys. Thank you for watching another episode of Nuts and Bolts, the series where we take a look at individual game elements. Sorry this one was a little bit rambly, but I'd like to hear what you have to say down below. Later days.